The massive research vessel Stellar Explorer drifted silently through the unexplored sector of the galaxy. Lead researcher Tom watched the holographic display with his 4 eyes, each focusing on different data streams. His species had mapped thousands of worlds, but this solar system showed peculiar readings that demanded investigation. "Captain, I found something extraordinary," Tom called out to Captain Jack, whose crystalline form shifted colors in response to the excitement in Tom's voice. "The third planet from this yellow star. It's registering as a Class 10 death world. But there's something wrong with the readings." The bridge crew gathered around the display, their various alien forms casting strange shadows in the dim light. According to their classifications, a Class 10 death world was essentially unsurvivable, a planet so hostile that even microorganisms would struggle to exist there. "Show me the data," Captain Jack commanded, his crystalline body now pulsing with deep blue curiosity. Tom brought up the planetary scans. "The atmosphere is heavily contaminated with free oxygen, a highly corrosive gas that should make complex life impossible. The gravity is crushing, 9.8 times stronger than our homeworld. Temperature variations swing wildly from freezing to burning across the surface. There are massive bodies of dihydrogen monoxide covering most of the planet." "That's impossible," interrupted Science Officer Mike, his tentacles writhing in agitation. "No single planet could have all these lethal conditions simultaneously. The instruments must be malfunctioning." But as they approached closer, the readings only became clearer. The planet hung in space like a blue and green jewel wrapped in swirling white clouds. It was beautiful, and according to every scientific principle they knew, it should have been a barren rock. "Wait," Tom's voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm detecting artificial satellites, thousands of them, and electromagnetic signals. This planet isn't just harboring life. It has a technological civilization." The bridge erupted in chaos. Captain Jack's crystalline form flashed through a rainbow of colors before settling on a stark white of shock. "Impossible. Check again." But the evidence was undeniable. As they established orbit, their sensors revealed sprawling cities, vast networks of transportation, and clear signs of an industrial civilization, all existing on a planet that, by their understanding, should have been completely hostile to life. "The dominant species appears to be Bictal," Tom reported, studying the readings with growing amazement. They're walking around in the open air. They're breathing the oxygen. Their bodies are mostly water. They're surviving in gravity that should crush them." The crew watched in stunned silence as their cameras zoomed in on human activities. They saw people jogging for pleasure in the crushing gravity, children playing in the corrosive atmosphere, humans swimming in vast bodies of liquid water that would dissolve most known species. "How?" Mike wondered aloud. "How did they evolve in these conditions? How are they not just surviving, but thriving?" Captain Jack made a decision. "Mark this in the records. We've just discovered something unprecedented, a species that has evolved to consider lethal conditions as normal. Their very existence defies our understanding of biology." "Should we make contact?" Tom asked, his eyes still fixed on the fascinating scenes below. "No," Captain Jack's form pulsed with cautionary red. "We need to study them first. Any species that can evolve to survive these conditions, imagine what they could do in an environment we consider normal. They could be incredibly dangerous." As the Stellar Explorer maintained its hidden orbit, the crew continued to observe, unaware that they had just discovered what would soon be recognized as the most lethal species in the known galaxy. Humans, the apex predators who considered a death world their comfortable home. The data they gathered that day would change the galaxy's understanding of what was possible and make every spacefaring race reevaluate their definition of deadly. But for now, they watched in silent awe as the inhabitants of Earth went about their daily lives, completely unaware that they were, by galactic standards, the most terrifying species ever encountered. 3 days into their hidden observation of Earth, The research team had filled multiple databanks with information that challenged everything they thought they knew about planetary science. Tom sat in the research lab, surrounded by holographic displays showing various aspects of Earth's lethal characteristics. "Look at this," he called to Mike, who was analyzing atmospheric samples. "These humans don't just survive in the oxygen-rich environment. They actually need it to live. Their entire cellular structure is built around oxygen consumption." Mike's tentacles curled in disbelief. "That's like evolving to need poison." And it gets stranger. Their bodies maintain a constant internal temperature of 37 degrees in their measurement system. They're walking fusion reactors. The ship's biological expert, Rob, joined them with his own startling findings. "You won't believe what I've discovered about their physical capabilities. These humans can repair broken bones. Their skin heals itself. They can survive the loss of entire limbs and continue functioning." The research team gathered around a large display showing various human activities. They watched in fascination as humans engaged in what they called sports, voluntary physical competitions that would be considered extreme survival situations on any other world. "They willingly jump from high places for entertainment," Tom noted, watching skydivers. "They climb frozen mountains without protection. They dive into the high-pressure depths of their water oceans. They're either insane or incredibly confident in their survival abilities." Captain Jack entered the lab, his crystalline form glowing with intense interest. "What about their warfare capabilities?" Rob brought up historical data they'd gathered from Earth's electronic networks. "Their military technology is concerning, but it's their biological resilience that's truly frightening. They can continue fighting with multiple injuries. They have something called adrenaline that can temporarily give them superhuman strength. They can go days without sleep if necessary. And their environmental adaptation is unprecedented," Mike added. "They've established settlements in frozen wastelands, burning deserts, and even underwater. They can survive in almost any condition we've observed on their planet." The team's attention turned to a new set of data about human diet. "Their feeding habits are perhaps the most terrifying aspect," Tom explained. "They can digest an incredible variety of materials. They deliberately consume substances that would be toxic to most species. They even intentionally eat plants and animals that cause pain responses. They call it spicy and enjoy it." Captain Jack's color shifted to a deep purple of concern. "What are their vulnerabilities?" The research team fell silent, looking at each other uncomfortably. Finally, Rob spoke up. "That's the problem, Captain. They seem to be able to adapt to almost anything. Even their weaknesses become strengths over time. They call it building immunity or getting stronger." "Show him the reproduction data," Mike suggested. Tom brought up new diagrams. "Their reproduction method is remarkably efficient. They can produce offspring in any season. Their young are helpless at birth, but develop rapidly, learning and adapting to their environment. And most incredibly, they pass down information about survival techniques through something called teaching, artificial evolution through knowledge transfer." Captain Jack absorbed this information, his crystalline form pulsing with deep thought. "So we're dealing with a species that treats deadly environments as normal, can survive multiple types of damage, adapts to new threats, and efficiently passes these abilities to their offspring." "Yes," Tom confirmed. "And they're expanding. Their population has grown exponentially in just a few centuries. They're already planning to colonize other planets in their system, planets we would consider even more hostile than Earth." The implications were clear to everyone in the room. They had discovered not just a death world, but a species that had mastered it so completely that they seemed almost invincible by galactic standards. "Continue monitoring," Captain Jack ordered, "but maintain absolute stealth. We need to know everything about these humans before the galaxy decides how to handle their existence. A species this resilient could be either the greatest ally or the most dangerous enemy the galaxy has ever known." Another week of observation brought even more disturbing revelations about Earth's dominant species. Tom and his research team had switched their focus from environmental conditions to studying human biology and history, and what they found left them in a state of continuous shock. "Captain, you need to see this footage," Tom called out during their morning briefing. The holographic display showed humans running long distances under the blazing sun. They're persistence hunters. Most prey animals on their planet can run faster, but humans just keep running until their target collapses from exhaustion. Captain Jack's crystalline form flickered with unease. "You mean they evolved to simply outlast their prey?" "Exactly," Rob added, pulling up anatomical diagrams. "Their bodies are designed for endurance. They can regulate temperature through something called sweating. They literally leak water to cool themselves. Most species would die of dehydration, but humans can replenish their water and keep going." The display shifted to show various human combat techniques. Mike's tentacles twisted nervously as he explained. "They've developed thousands of different ways to fight. But here's the truly terrifying part. They practice these deadly skills for fun. They call it martial arts and teach it to their young." The research team had compiled a massive database of human physical capabilities. They watched recordings of humans lifting several times their body weight, swimming across vast distances, and surviving falls that should have been fatal. "Look at this," Tom highlighted a medical record. A human male survived a metal rod being driven through his skull. Another human lived for years with half their brain removed. Their redundant organ systems and rapid healing abilities are beyond anything we've encountered. Captain Jack pulsed with concern. "What about their intelligence level?" Rob brought up new data. "Their problem-solving abilities are remarkable. When faced with a limitation, they don't adapt their bodies. They change their environment instead. Too cold. They make fire. Can't fly. They build machines that can. Their technology is advancing at an exponential rate." The display showed humans in various environments. Deep underwater in submarines, high in the mountains, in protective suits in space. They're not content just surviving in their already lethal environment, Mike noted. They deliberately seek out even more dangerous conditions and find ways to survive there too. Tom pulled up historical records. Their history is filled with examples of incredible survival. Humans have lived through freezing temperatures, decades of imprisonment, weeks without food, and catastrophic injuries. There are cases of individuals surviving lightning strikes, multiple bullet wounds, and even falling from flying vehicles at high altitude. "And their group behavior?" Captain Jack inquired. The team exchanged nervous glances before Rob answered. "That's perhaps the most dangerous aspect. They form strong social bonds and will risk death to help even unrelated members of their species. They can coordinate in large numbers and pass down knowledge across generations. A single human is dangerous. A group of humans is almost unstoppable." The display showed scenes from human conflicts, armies moving in formation, complex strategic planning, and the development of increasingly sophisticated weapons. "They've turned their survival abilities into military advantages," Mike explained. "Their endurance, pain tolerance, and problem-solving skills make them formidable warriors." "But here's the strangest part," Tom added, showing peaceful scenes of human interaction. "Despite all these lethal capabilities, they're capable of extreme gentleness. They create art, care for other species, and show something they call compassion. They can switch between being deadly predators and nurturing caregivers instantly." Captain Jack's form swirled with multiple colors as he processed this information. "So we're dealing with a species that combines peak physical resilience, rapid technological advancement, strong social cooperation, and unpredictable behavior patterns." "Yes," Tom confirmed. "And they appear to be completely unaware of how extraordinary they are. To them, all of this is just normal." The research team fell silent, contemplating the implications. They had discovered a species that wasn't just surviving on a death world. They were thriving on it, mastering it, and using its deadly conditions to become even stronger. In the Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Military Headquarters, Dozens of different alien species gathered around a massive holographic projection of Earth. The room buzzed with nervous energy as Captain Jack and his research team presented their findings. Distinguished council members, Captain Jack began, his crystalline form glowing with formal blue light. What we've discovered in Earth's solar system changes everything we thought we knew about biological capabilities and military potential. The head of the Military Council, Admiral Bill, leaned forward on his hover platform. His metallic scales reflected the hologram's light as he spoke. Your preliminary report mentioned something about their natural weapons. Tom stepped forward, bringing up detailed anatomical scans. Yes, Admiral. Humans are walking arsenals. Their bones are reinforced with calcium, essentially internal body armor. Their blood contains iron. They produce natural chemical weapons in their bodies, including acids in their digestive system strong enough to break down complex organic matter. The council chamber erupted in murmurs as Rob displayed combat footage. Their physical structure allows them to generate incredible force. A trained human can break stone with their limbs. They can throw objects with deadly accuracy. They're one of the few species that evolved to kill at a distance. But surely they have weaknesses, asked Commander Ed, his gelatinous form quivering with concern. Mike activated a new set of holograms. That's what makes them truly dangerous. Their weaknesses are minimal, and they've developed technology to compensate for them. Poor night vision. They created artificial light, limited flight capability. They built machines that can break orbital velocity. The council watched in stunned silence as the presentation showed humans surviving in various extreme conditions: deep sea pressure, radiation zones, and even the vacuum of space. Most concerning, Tom continued, is that conditions we consider weapons-grade are simply normal to them. The oxygen content in their atmosphere would be considered a chemical weapon on most worlds. Their normal gravity would be classified as a heavy weapons deployment zone. Even their temperature variations exceed our combat environment guidelines. Admiral Bill's scales darkened with worry. What about their military technology? Captain Jack changed the display to show Earth's weapons development. They'd weaponized every natural force they'd discovered. But what's truly frightening is their rate of advancement. In just a few centuries, they'd gone from primitive projectiles to weapons that can split atoms. And their military doctrine, Commander Ed pressed. Complex and adaptable, Rob explained. They can wage war in any environment: land, sea, air, and now space. They've developed strategies for everything from single combat to global warfare. And they constantly train for combat, even in peacetime. The hologram shifted to show human emergency responders. They even have specialized groups who deliberately enter conditions that we would consider lethal, Tom added. They call them firefighters and rescue workers. They charge into burning buildings or toxic environments to save others. Admiral Bill raised a limb for silence as the council chamber buzzed with worried discussions. What are your recommendations, Captain? Captain Jack's form pulsed with careful consideration before responding. We have two options. Either we establish peaceful contact now, while we have the chance to make allies of them, or we need to prepare for the possibility of eventually facing a species that treats lethal combat conditions as their natural environment. Could we contain them? Commander Ed asked. Unlikely, Mike replied. They're already expanding into space. They've survived every natural disaster their planet has thrown at them. Any attempt to contain them would likely only make them stronger. They have a remarkable ability to learn from and adapt to threats. The council chamber fell into tense silence as the implications sank in. They were facing a species that didn't just survive in conditions that would kill most galactic citizens. They had mastered those conditions and turned them into advantages. Admiral Bill's scales shifted to a deep blue of decision. We need more information before we decide. Continue your observation, but increase military readiness across all sectors. The galaxy needs to be prepared, whether humans turn out to be allies or adversaries. After months of debate, the Galactic Council finally decided to initiate first contact with Earth. The diplomatic vessel Peaceseeker descended through Earth's atmosphere, its advanced cloaking systems still engaged as it approached a predetermined landing zone in a neutral territory called Switzerland. "Remember," Ambassador Dan addressed his nervous diplomatic team, his bioluminescent skin pulsing with calming patterns. "Despite their deadly capabilities, all observations suggest humans respond well to peaceful approaches. Just try not to show fear." The landing site was surrounded by what humans called mountains, massive rocky formations that would have been considered natural fortress walls on any other world. Local human authorities had been contacted through careful radio communications, and a small welcoming committee waited below. "Their vital signs are remarkably stable," Medical Officer Ray reported, monitoring the human delegation through the ship's sensors. "Standing in the cold mountain air, under crushing gravity, breathing corrosive oxygen. And they appear completely relaxed." Ambassador Dan took a deep breath of filtered air. "Begin landing sequence. And remember, no sudden movements. These beings can react faster than most species can even process danger." The Peaceseeker decloaked as it touched down, causing gasps of wonder from the human delegation. The ship's external cameras showed the humans maintaining their positions, though several had pulled out primitive image-capturing devices. "They're not running in terror," Security Chief Bob noted with surprise. "Most species panic at first contact." The diplomatic team descended from their ship, their environmental suits carefully designed to appear non-threatening, while still protecting them from Earth's hostile conditions. Ambassador Dan led the way, approaching the human delegation with measured steps. The human leader stepped forward, a female in what they had learned was formal diplomatic attire. She showed her teeth in what their research indicated was a friendly gesture called a smile. "Welcome to Earth," she said, her voice clear through their universal translators. "We are honored to be humanity's representatives for this historic moment." Ambassador Dan was struck by how calm she seemed. No elevated stress indicators, no sign of fear facing an alien species. "We bring greetings from the Galactic Council," he responded, his skin glowing with diplomatic patterns. The initial exchange went smoother than anyone had expected. The humans showed remarkable adaptability in dealing with the various alien forms before them. They asked intelligent questions, showed appropriate caution without paranoia, and demonstrated an unexpected grasp of cosmic principles. "Would you like to continue our discussions inside?" The human diplomat gestured toward a nearby building. "We've prepared a climate-controlled environment to match the specifications you sent." The alien delegation was touched by this consideration, though they soon learned the humans could have easily conducted the meeting in virtually any conditions. Inside, over what humans called a diplomatic lunch, which fascinated the xenobiologists in the delegation, watching humans casually consume materials that would be toxic to most species, the real revelations began. "We've been watching your television broadcasts," one human official mentioned casually. "We've known about alien life for decades. We just waited for you to make contact." Ambassador Dan's skin flickered with surprise. "You weren't afraid." The human diplomat laughed, a sound that made several delegation members flinch until their translators identified it as expressing amusement. "Afraid? We've been hoping to meet our galactic neighbors. There's so much we could learn from each other." As the meetings progressed, the alien delegation found themselves repeatedly surprised. These humans, these beings who could survive conditions that would kill most species, who had evolved on a death world and mastered it, were primarily interested in cultural exchange, scientific cooperation, and peaceful coexistence. Perhaps, Ambassador Dan thought as he watched humans and aliens beginning to interact more comfortably, we were wrong to fear them. Their deadly capabilities seemed matched by an equally powerful capacity for peace. But even as he thought this, he noticed how the human security personnel constantly scanned their surroundings, how their bodies remained ready for instant action, even in apparent relaxation. They were peaceful, yes, but never defenseless. 6 months after first contact, the Galactic Council faced its greatest threat. The Void Swarm, a previously unknown hostile species, attacked the peaceful agricultural world of New Eden. The council chamber erupted into chaos as emergency transmissions flooded in. "They've overrun our primary defenses." Commander Ed's gelatinous form rippled with distress as he watched the tactical displays. "Our weapons barely affect them. They're adapted to space and extreme environments. They're consuming everything in their path." Admiral Bill's metallic scales had turned a dark gray of despair. 3 response fleets destroyed. Nothing in our military doctrine prepared us for this kind of threat. These creatures treat space itself as their natural habitat. The holographic displays showed scenes of devastation. The Void Swarm moved through vacuum and atmosphere alike, their biological ships immune to conventional weapons. They consumed organic matter, converted it to more of their kind, and moved on to the next target. Wait. Captain Jack's crystalline form suddenly pulsed with realization. "We do know one species that specializes in surviving impossible conditions and adapting to new threats." The chamber fell silent as everyone realized what he meant. Ambassador Dan's skin flickered with concern. "The humans. They barely joined the galactic community. We can't ask them to fight our war." But desperation won out. The emergency transmission was sent to Earth's newly established galactic embassy. The response came faster than anyone expected. "Message from the Human Military Command," a communications officer announced. They're laughing. The main screen activated, showing a human military commander. Behind him, soldiers were already boarding transport ships. "Finally," he said, "a chance to show you what we can really do. We've been holding back in joint training exercises. Didn't want to frighten anyone. But this enemy," Admiral Bill began, "they survive in space. They resist our strongest weapons." The human commander's face showed what they had learned was a grin, a particularly unsettling expression given the context. "You mean like how we evolved on a planet that should have killed us? Trust me, we know a thing or two about impossible enemies." Within hours, Earth's military forces were mobilizing. The Council watched in amazement as human ships, far more robust than standard galactic designs, launched into space. Their vessels didn't avoid the harsh conditions of space. They were built to weaponize them. "Their ships," Tom observed from his research station, "they're not just defensive. They've turned every lethal aspect of their environment into a weapon. They're using modified versions of the same things that should have killed them on Earth." The first battle reports came in from New Eden. The human forces had engaged the Void Swarm directly. Where galactic forces had tried to fight from a safe distance, humans closed in, fighting in conditions that would kill most species. "They're using the vacuum of space to their advantage," Rob reported, watching the tactical feeds. "Their ships vent atmosphere as weapons. They're manipulating gravity fields, redirecting radiation. They're treating space like just another hostile environment to master." But it was the ground combat that truly shocked the Council. Human soldiers, protected by suits that seemed impossibly minimal to galactic standards, engaged the Void Swarm in close combat. They adapted faster than their enemy, developed new tactics on the fly, and demonstrated why being from a death world made them the perfect warriors against a seemingly invincible foe. "Message from the human commander," the communications officer announced. The tactical display showed human forces had pushed the Void Swarm back from New Eden's main continent. The human commander appeared on screen, looking battered but energized. "We've identified their weaknesses. Turns out, when you evolve on the most lethal planet in known space, you learn a thing or two about finding ways to survive, and ways to make sure other things don't." The Galactic Council watched in awe as humanity demonstrated why they weren't just survivors of a death world. They were its masters. And now, the galaxy understood why that was both terrifying and, in this moment, exactly what they needed. The final battle against the Void Swarm unfolded unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Human military forces had taken command of the defense operations, applying strategies that seemed insane to most galactic species, but prove devastatingly effective. They're doing what? Admiral Bill's scales flashed in disbelief as he watched the tactical display. They're using their own ships as weapons, Tom explained, monitoring the battle data. When a ship is critically damaged, instead of abandoning it, they're deliberately driving it into the largest void swarm concentrations. The explosions create chain reactions in space that tear the swarm apart. The human forces had transformed the battlefield. They used solar radiation as a weapon, deliberately creating solar flares to disrupt the swarm's biological ships. They weaponized gravity, temperature, and even the vacuum of space itself, all the lethal conditions they had evolved to survive. Look at their ground forces, Rob pointed to another display. Human soldiers were engaging the swarm in close combat, using their natural endurance and adaptability to outlast their enemy. They're not just fighting, they're learning. Every encounter teaches them new ways to kill the swarm. Commander Ed watched in amazement as human troops demonstrated techniques that seemed impossible. They fought in environments ranging from airless moons to toxic atmospheres, adapting their tactics to each new challenge. They're not just surviving these conditions, they're using them as advantages. The human commander's voice came through the command channel. We've identified the swarm's central consciousness, preparing for Operation Deathworld. The council chamber watched as human forces executed their final strategy. It was a plan that only a species from Earth could have conceived, and only they could survive implementing. They're deliberately creating a miniature sun, Tom reported, his voice filled with awe. They're using their understanding of fusion, the same process that powers their home star, as a weapon. The artificial star burst into existence, its radiation and gravitational forces tearing through the swarm's biological ships. The human forces, protected by shields based on their experience with Earth's natural radiation, pressed their advantage. Message from the human commander, the communications officer announced. The commander appeared on screen, his battle suit scared, but his expression triumphant. The swarm's central consciousness has been destroyed. Their remaining forces are breaking apart. Victory is confirmed. In the aftermath, as the galactic forces surveyed the battlefield, the true significance of what had happened became clear. Humanity hadn't just won a war. They had demonstrated why Earth's deadly conditions had created the ultimate warriors. Admiral Bill addressed the council. We've learned something profound today. We always thought Earth was a death world because of its lethal conditions. But those conditions created a species that can survive anything, adapt to everything, and turn deadly environments into advantages. Ambassador Dan's skin pulsed with thoughtful patterns. Perhaps this is why the humans never seemed afraid of space. To them, it's just another hostile environment to master, like their homeworld. The human commander joined the council meeting, still in his battle-worn suit. You know what we learned growing up on Earth. There's no such thing as an impossible situation. There's just another challenge to overcome, another environment to adapt to, another enemy to outlast. The council chamber fell silent as they processed this revelation. Earth wasn't just a death world. It was the ultimate training ground. Its lethal conditions had forged a species that could face any threat, survive any environment, and emerge stronger from every challenge. We request, Admiral Bill announced formally, that Earth take the lead in establishing a new galactic defense force. Your people's unique capabilities and perspective are exactly what the galaxy needs. The human commander smiled, that expression that no longer seemed so unsettling to the council members. We'd be honored. After all, if there's one thing Earth taught us, it's that the most dangerous environments produce the strongest defenders. As the galaxy entered a new era, one truth became universally acknowledged. The most lethal planet ever recorded had created not just survivors, but protectors, a species that could face any threat because they had mastered the art of turning deadly conditions into strengths.